When VARCHAR is bad, I said before one of my favourites was not null, but I have to say that this is my pet peeve when I go to client sites and I see VARCHAR 255. And the reason why is that there are two things that's listed up there. The first is that it shows poor design. It shows that you haven't taken into consideration what you're going to store in the field. Now I understand in the Web 2.0 world things are changing. You don't really know. Okay, that may be a valid case, but 255 is just a bad sign. You really should think about it. I mean, you're going to have, like in Twitter gives you 120 bytes. Well, don't decide it as a VARCHAR 255. You've decided in the application you're going to make it 120. Make it VARCHAR 120. The other thing that I see when I see VARCHAR 255 is the first thing is that the person who designed this is generally coming from a MySQL 3.0 or 3.x or 4.x world. The limitation of VARCHAR changed so that it's now 65,000 bytes in a field. So I just sort of said, oh, well, how old is this schema? When was the last time someone reviewed it? And as I mentioned before, the disk usage may be efficient, but the internal memory usage may not. So when you have a table like this, which I saw 6 weeks ago, you realise it's not good. And it's not good for two reasons. Not only are there VARCHAR 255s everywhere, but if someone's very... What's the other reason why it's bad? I want to have a guess. Yes, hand on the back there.
Postal code is way too long.
Well, yeah, just think past the columns for a second. Is there something else in there that bothers you with the schema? You take us. Yes, cool. Yeah, there is char set UTF-8 down the bottom, so yeah, that wasn't what I was thinking about. But one more guess. Sorry, what's that?
There just seems to be like lots and lots of stuff that can be broken up.
Oh yeah, okay. So maybe I didn't ask the question very well. The primary key is defined as VARCHAR 255.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, it's my ISIM, that's cool, but this was a migration from 4 to 5. Sorry, I'm getting excited. And part of the migration process was to convert from MyISAM to NODB. Now, VARCHAR 255 is not a good primary key when you have multiple indexes. I think I don't show the indexes there. But in several other tables where there are multiple indexes, not only is VARCHAR 255 inefficient, but the actual way in which NODB creates secondary indexes, storing the primary key value, not a pointer to the primary key, made it inefficient. I'm trying to work out what the values were. Oh yes, I should say that the value that was actually stored in order handle was actually 4 individual components, which were number, hyphen number, dot, number, dot, 0, which could have actually been 4 data types, but I think it was like 16 bytes. So some people do weird things, but this is a classic example that it was not designed by any data architect. Even a bad Oracle data architect would not do that. This is designed by a developer. And we'll talk about developers more in a minute. On that note, one should clarify, how much time do I have to talk? It's 2:45, is that right? No one's got a schedule? Okay. You can just all stay. So, another thing which is interesting, so we're talking about design here, and I'm focusing on the things that are important for the data architects, but you have to also realise that just because you design a fantastic schema doesn't mean that the people are going to use it and know what they're doing. And if you use select star is not good. It makes it easy because you're getting all the columns back. It's like doing an insert without specifying the column values. But if you decide to change the schema, then your code will actually break. Select star is okay if you've got 2 columns, you're always selecting them, maybe. But one of the issues is that a lot of people store text or block columns in their tables. And what people don't realise is that if you have to use a temporary table in MySQL, then that's automatically flushed to disk because it can't sort it in memory. So just taking select star, for example, means, oh, I have a text field and I'm going to do something with it, which is requiring an internal temporary table. And MySQL documents on the forge like the 12 different reasons why temporary tables are used, or why you might be using 2 temporary tables per SQL statement. That will actually flush that to disk. So if you're looking at show status, show global status I should say, show status will throw out those people moving from 4 to 5. You'll see created temp tables, that's fine, if it's 60 or 100 or 200 per second, that's no big problem. But when there's 60 created temp disk tables per second, That's 60 disk IOs, and one has to wonder why. And if you're doing select star and there was a text column in there when it wasn't actually needed for the results that was being sorted, you're going back to your slowest physical resource, which was disk. I should just also point out there as a little note, with different storage engines, there are different ways to store blob fields. I'm not going to plug what's on the back of my shirt, which we store blobs more efficiently. But within ODB, you need to be aware that there's a certain management which is stored internally in the row in the 16K page, which you can get to 15/16 if you use the right primary key. But after that, it starts allocating individual 16K data pages for individual text blob fields. So when you have multiple text blob fields and you put data in them, you may find that your INODB size of the database is much larger than you actually thought because of the allocation of different pages. So we move from the take off the data architect hat and we put on the DBA hat, the system administrator hat, and all the people who hate developers hat. This is important because you need to know every SQL statement that you run. You can't be a Facebook and not know what SQL statements are hitting the database. So the reason why is the first point. Developers don't write good SQL statements. I have a friend who manages, a top 15 website as a DBA and talks about stories that have been paged in the morning at 2 AM because something happened, and it happens multiple times, and then he tells me why, and I say, well, you should just, when you get paged, you should just say, what code did you release? Just roll it back and then page me if there's still a problem. Because the developers were making code changes and deploying it into their 100+ web servers, and it was destroying performance. And at the end of the day, if you're a DBA here, you don't want to be paged, and performance is important. And the person who pays your salary thinks that performance is important too. There are many things that get caught out if you know your SQL statements. As I pointed there, on many times I've seen multiple statements being executed on the same page for no purpose. Open source frameworks are not open source frameworks, open source products can do this quite a lot. Particularly, CMS or blogging sites where they do multiple selects of the same data for your user preferences to pay on the page. It's just unnecessary. It may be coming from cache, there may be a level of optimization there, but just simply the fact that your application server has to send a statement to the database server, take the time in the database kernel to process that statement and return it, except when you're using query cache. That takes time, and the most amount of time is actually the network latency. So when you have hundreds of these and you're doing ones that are repeated, you're actually taking more time it takes to render your page, and you're making the database do more work, and so that's limiting your potential growth. But what you generally don't find, unless you look at all your SQL statements, is that quite often it's not one slow query that is affecting you, it's the same query that's executed 1,000 times, or 10,000 times, or 100,000 times, and it's not being cached effectively. And these are things which just really can just detract from your system running as optimally as possible.